What is up, you college football sickos? It's 11 p.m. at night, and we just got finished watching that Oregon-Ohio State matchup. Unbelievable game. Oregon wins it at home 31-32. Just a massive win for the Ducks. Now, we're going to break it all down. We're going to get into a bunch of games. I got Steve Wiltfong. You know, Steve's usually in that 2-box, but today, Steve's here in Nashville hanging out. That's how big of a recruit reaction we got. So before we get going, guys, do me a favor right now. Go ahead and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We do this every Saturday night. Also, the Wiltfong Whip Around on Mondays, the Inside Scoop on Sunday and Wednesdays. The Wiltfong Whip Around's Monday and Thursday, actually. And also, all week, we got the 5-Star Flex. So we're going to get into it. We're going to break down some games. Right now, we're going to talk Oregon. Steve, we just witnessed an instant classic in Eugene, and there were some recruits on campus. What do you think the recruiting impact of this one's going to be?
Well, I've already logged one Oregon on 3 RPM in favor of the Ducks following this ball game. Two-way standout linebacker target McKay Madsen, like Oregon there as they battle UCLA and BYU. They had him in camp this summer, have him on campus right now. Traded some texts with him after the ball game, and him and his mom are having a fantastic time in Eugene right now. Look, Oregon, you can't rule them out for anybody, right? We called him a dark horse for 5-star cornerback Naeem Offord, committed to Ohio State coming into the visit, but they're certainly in the thick of that one. His dad has told me Dan Lanning's their favorite coach. So on campus to watch Oregon get the biggest win of the Dan Lanning era so far. Tight end, major position of need for Oregon. They offered Vander Plug earlier in the fall. Right. Now they get him on campus, traded some messages with him. He's having a good time at Oregon.
I bet he is right now. So right now, Steve
Stewart called it the game of the year.
In the wake of a win like this, what's the recruits' experience right now, 5-10 minutes after the game's ended?
Well, that's the beauty of it, right? When you bring in all these blue chippers for a game like this, you bring them into your locker room after the game, and they get to soak in what it's like to win a ball game like this, because these are the kind of games they see themselves playing in on the college level, and now they get to go in the locker room, be around the players. It's going to be rowdy in that locker room. The coaches are in a fantastic mood. Their families are going to be around. All the administrators at Oregon, Phil Knight on down. This is, a terrific environment in and outside the Oregon locker room, and these recruits have a front row seat for it. And these are guys that can help keep it rolling for the Ducks for years to come. So Jakeem Stewart coming into the visit, you talk about it's going to be hard at the end of the day for LSU to let this kid leave their state. But look, there's been times where Ohio State's been the leader.
You go out and you put a performance like this together.
Right, exactly right. So there's been times where Ohio State has looked like the leader for Jakeem Stewart. Times where USC has looked like the leader for Jakeem Stewart. But he has called Dan Lanning a defensive mastermind in conversations before. He's been on campus several times. He got there on Friday, so soaked in all the pregame buildup Friday, Saturday morning, attended the game, having a fabulous experience. And Oregon is in the thick of that one for Jakeem Stewart.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Jakeem Stewart, Vander Plug, like you said, Naeem Offord. I mean, I don't know. You just said that recruits come to a game like this and they imagine themselves in this situation. But Naeem Offord, he's committed to Ohio State. I wonder which sideline he's imagining himself on after a game like this. Obviously, Oregon has a foot in the door. I wouldn't say that he was on flip watch heading into this, but an experience like this, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. Again, these are the kind of games that these recruits see themselves playing in, and to watch Oregon get the first major win of the Dan Lanning era. They've been close. They've been in these ball games. They've been on the cusp of the college football playoff. They're one of the favorites to win the national championship now after a performance like this without Jordan Birch, their top pass rusher. But to hold court at home in a game like this was obviously huge. And the recruiting ramifications, Oregon looking for a second straight top 5 recruiting class, third straight top 10 class. Caleb Burns, he's a linebacker from the Lone Star State on 300 recruit. Oklahoma's put out a late offer to him too. Baylor commit. Well, Oklahoma, they got ran over today by the Texas Longhorns, while Caleb Burns is watching Oregon get a huge win over Ohio State, arguably the best win any team has had in college football this season to date.
So you put in one new pick. And how about that? I mean, you're watching this recruit reaction show. You love college football. You love recruiting. And you got Steve Wiltfong just dropping picks in the minutes after Oregon wins. You got to love that. So are you thinking about putting a pick in for Caleb Burns here to flip from Baylor?
Well, I'd like to talk to him first and get a true sense of how this visit's going. And look, Oregon's in the mix for a lot of guys here down the stretch as Dan Lanning and company look to get spatula crazy. Noah McHale is a linebacker that's currently committed to Texas A&M that they're still going to war with the Aggies for him as well. But there's no question. Look, when Caleb Burns got offered by Oregon that day, he had this game on the calendar circled. I'm going to Eugene. I'm going to watch them play Ohio State. And they delivered, man. And I'm telling you again, Dan Lanning, his defensive track record, some of the players that he coached at the University of Georgia, particularly at the linebacker position, that's really going to stand out to players like Caleb Burns while they're on campus. Zach Stokowski. Look, Oregon's losing 5 or 6 of their top 7 offensive linemen after the season. So they want to still add guys at that position. They offered Zach earlier in the fall, getting him on campus this weekend as well. And I know they love to stick it to Washington.
Right, I was going to say that.
Look, I mean, like Washington moving with Oregon to the Big Ten was only right because that's a hell of a rivalry that they've had over the last couple years. But Oregon, they're clicking on all cylinders right now. Again, Naeem offered coming out. There was a little bit of a confusion. Confusion is not the right word. He had this visit circled. He was going to come to the Ohio State-Oregon game. Oregon wanted him to come in a couple weeks to have a more low-key visit where he could spend more time with the coaching staff. I think that's because they know they got to make up ground, right? He's been to Auburn several times this fall, games and practice. Obviously, he's committed to Ohio State. So you bring him in on a weekend like this, how much time are you truly going to get to spend with him, with your defensive staff, with your head coach, with this big game going on, all the hoopla? Dan Lanning's on like 4 different TV shows before the game and did a hell of a job, you know. But now,
I mean, it looks a lot. It looks great when you win.
But now they get the win.
Yeah.
So they get that, right? And they can have those other conversations later. He got to see what Autzen Stadium was like at night. It looked alive there. The stadium seemed to be moving. And Oregon's going to be moving up the list for a lot of these guys. Had a lot of stud 2026s and 2027s on campus as well. You know, Max Torres, Justin Hopkins over there at our Oregon on 3 site are going to have a lot of coverage. Obviously, I'll be coming in there with what I'm hearing on the trail. But Oregon, they got a chance to finish with a spectacular class in 2026 too. You see those 2 jewels of the class, Tony Cumberland and Jonas Williams. They're both back in Eugene this weekend. Talanoa Illy is a prize linebacker recruit. Jet Washington has been to all the big games across the country. Las Vegas Bishop Gorman athlete that Oregon likes in the secondary. Davon Benjamin's a corner that they have a good shot to sign. Bot Mulatalo has been on campus a ton, a top 100 defensive lineman. So again, Oregon got it done. Humongous recruit section. Again, we saw what Jakeem Stewart said earlier, best game ever. I've been talking with his people through the week and traded some texts tonight. You know, as you can imagine, reception's not that great right now around
all those
Autzen
people going
Stadium.
crazy in there.
But they're in the locker room now and they're partying it up, and it's they're front and center. And some of those guys will stay the night, so they'll go out with the players tonight and.
It's gonna be a fun night. Yeah, it's just getting going.
24-hour rule, but does it start right now? Let's get after it, baby.
Let's speaking of just getting going, so is the recruit reaction show. Let's bring in our cast of characters. Let's bring in Hayes Fawcett. Hayes, you were watching the game and you know everything that's going on behind the scenes. You know where the pieces could be moving to. What do you think a win like this does for Dan Lanning on the trail?
A win is huge for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. I mean, you look at all the top recruits that were there. You know, you got guys like Naeem Alford, who are committed to Ohio State, DeCorian Moore, who's currently committed to Oregon, who I exchanged some texts with during the game as well. I mean, the implications winning a big game like this are definitely huge. And, we could definitely see some commitments coming after this game for sure.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. I'm going to have you all your tweets on notifications coming out of this one. A busy weekend. We're gonna get to some of these other games, but let's tie a bow on this Oregon.
Hayes, look, tonight, Jordan James, 115 yards and a touchdown. Evan Stewart out of the portal, 149 yards and a touchdown. Someone on offense or defense, who are you close with that's at Oregon that played well tonight?
Evan Stewart for sure. He was one that I was able to work with during high school, and also was fortunate enough to work with during the portal. Obviously, he was one of the top receivers in the 2022 class, I believe. Committed to A&M out of high school, and then recently entered the portal, and then ultimately chose the Ducks. And yeah, man, like he played great tonight, like you said, 170 yards, a touchdown. He also drew a very important pass interference late in the game that ultimately led them to kicking that field goal toward the end.
Hayes,
that was great.
Hayes, Evan Stewart was committed to Texas at one point, ended up signing with Texas A&M, named Florida his leader at one time during his high school recruiting process as well. Then his portal journey wasn't as swift as some of the others too. Take us through what it was like covering him behind the scenes. Is he going in the portal? New coaching staff at A&M? Did he give them a chance? How quickly was it Oregon? What do you remember from Evan Stewart's portal journey?
From his portal journey, it was very quiet and kind of behind the scenes. I remember, throughout the portal, there's a lot of updates where, people were listing where they're visiting and schools reaching out. With Evan Stewart, everything was kind of kept close to the vest with him. I'm not sure if he visited any other school off the top of my head, but I do know that, Oregon, from the time he got in the portal, Oregon was, the school that, in my opinion, I thought had the best chance of landing him, and ultimately did.
All right, Oregon fans, talk to us. How do you guys feel about this win? How about Ohio State taking a knee at the end of the game, essentially letting Oregon win the game? What a crazy ending to just a instant classic game. You guys talk to us, comment section below. What do you think the recruiting implications will be from Oregon, Ohio State? Let us know. All right, we got to go down to Knoxville. We're talking Tennessee recruiting, 101,915. That was the official attendance in Neyland Stadium to watch that Florida Gator rivalry. Obviously, Tennessee goes into overtime. They win it 23-17, and there were some important recruits on campus, Steve.
Look, survive and advance. The big game is next weekend against Alabama. Tennessee had some top targets in Knoxville for this game against Florida, but it's going to be double, triple that next week for Alabama, and winning this ball game makes it a much bigger contest, obviously, next weekend in Neyland Stadium.
Obviously, Josh Heupel, I mean, we're looking at some of the visitors that were there. Obviously, Josh Heupel wanted to get some key players in because he knew it was going to be a big game atmosphere, but we know what Tennessee's capable of when it comes to bringing in visitors. Now, they brought in a lot of their best commitments. What do you think Tennessee was trying? You think they felt, here's what I felt. Tennessee thought they were going to come in here and whoop some butt at night. So let's bring in David Sanders. Let's bring in George. Let's bring in Travis Smith. Let's bring in all of our commits, reestablish, make sure they're all locked in. And then for the big one, we'll bring in all the uncommitted guys and the flip targets. But I mean, this game had all the elements of a classic, but I don't know if it should have been this close.
Well, anything can happen in a rivalry game.
Right.
Obviously, we know that. We've been around college football a long time.
At night in the SEC, anything can happen.
It's tough to go on the road and win at night in any conference, certainly inside Neyland Stadium. But Florida was game. They had their opportunities. Graham Mertz fumbling on the 1-yard line was crushing if you're a Gators fan. But look, Tennessee's defense made a ton of plays. They were ferocious. They got after the quarterback. They were able to keep Tennessee afloat. And then obviously the offense eventually made enough plays, and then they got it to overtime. And again, defense took over there and they get the win. And then you have guys like Zion Ely, the #1 ranked edge rusher in the 2026 class, who's inside Neyland Stadium, and him and I were trading some messages, and it's just different at Tennessee at night. He's having a fantastic time at Tennessee. Look, Lagonza Shady Hayward was one of the biggest visitors on campus,
which is important. He was at Georgia last week.
Exactly right. He's going to be back at Alabama next week. But again, Tennessee survive and advance this game. Look, we've seen so many upsets this year. Teams losing games they shouldn't lose.
Just beat Kentucky.
Anytime
it can happen
on the road at night.
On the road at night.
But Tennessee, the big recruiting weekends next weekend against Alabama. That's going to be the recruit reaction show. There's going to be a lot of blue chippers on campus, spanning several different recruiting classes. You also have Tennessee and Georgia next weekend, right? So maybe that's not the recruit.
Texas and Georgia.
Excuse me, Texas and Georgia.
Yeah, that might
weekend.
Be.
So
many.
A couple big recruiting weekends next weekend, but Tennessee's surviving this weekend, beating the Gators, and getting it to next weekend for what's going to be a massive recruiting weekend.
And I think, this is a recruit reaction show. So if you're a Florida Gator recruit, they don't win it. But I mean, the Gators, they played DJ Lagway. They were playing a lot of freshmen. And if you're not a great team, the way to sell it is, hey, you got an opportunity to come in and play right away and make a difference here. And you saw the Gators were fighting. I mean, you say whatever you want about Billy Napier and how bad this team was going to be before the season started. They're a formidable opponent. They might not be winning all these games, but they're out there competing.
No, they're playing hard for Billy Napier and this coaching staff. And Florida's definitely improved every season that Billy Napier's been at the helm, in my opinion. And you look at their losses: Miami undefeated, Tennessee just one loss. They lose on the road at night, and then Texas A&M at home. Texas A&M's ripped off 5 games in a row. That's nothing to
shake a stick at.
Exactly right. But look, it comes with the expectations at Florida, the seasons prior, maybe the way you've recruited to a certain degree. But look, we know that Florida's battling, so we'll see what happens next week. But they got a rigorous schedule coming up with teams like Ole Miss and Georgia waiting for them here in the.
Yeah, they would have loved to get this win on the road, because what's going to happen now is the schedule doesn't get any easier. And not that Tennessee at night's easy, but when you have that opportunity, the game's right there. Yeah, of course, Graham Mertz gets injured. DJ Lagway has to pick it up. DJ Lagway, he got put in a tough situation, but he made the most of it. Throws a touchdown to tie the game, put it into overtime. You got to love it. Now, next week, though, who are some of the big names you're expecting? Do you have any in mind that are going to be at Tennessee?
Look, that's a loaded question. I just know that Tennessee is going to have.
Can we expect David? Do you think some of these guys?
Well, I think the commits.
Yeah,
I think the commits, depending on their own high school schedule, certainly you're going to see those guys back on campus. You're going to see some of the elite juniors in America at Tennessee next.
But if you could mix some of these top commits in with some of your top targets, I mean, that's kind of the formula of getting guys to flip or getting guys to commit late. So we'll see what happens. But Tennessee wins it 23-17. Tennessee fans, you got to be feeling good walking out of Neyland Stadium right now. Tough game, but you pull it out 23-17. You get that SEC win. Talk to us in the comments section below. Are you guys ready for next week? And what top recruits do you want to see on the sidelines when Alabama comes to town? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, we're going to talk a little Colorado right now. I know the game is currently on, but there were some big-time visitors that made it to Boulder for this matchup against Kansas State. And one of the themes that we've been talking throughout the week is it seems to me we're adding new recruits to Colorado's board. It seems to me like Coach Prime and the Buffs are starting to wake up on the recruiting trail. Not to say that they were sleeping during the summer, but I mean, hey, there just wasn't much action going on. But this week we had reports on Keelan Russell. We had reports on Juju Lewis. We know London Merritt's at this game. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, Christian Hudson. There's some major flip targets on campus. What do you think of Colorado recruiting heading into this Kansas State game right now?
Well, look, if they can get a win against Kansas State tonight, it's going to really be rolling with some of the guys. Because Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, not a guy we were talking about with Colorado.
Not at all.
London Merritt, not a guy we were talking about
not
with
at
Colorado.
All.
Their coaches go on the road last week. They send 2 coaches to IMG. They each bring an official visitor back with them.
How about that?
And so Cincinnati, big game in a couple weeks. They're going to have some high-profile official visitors on campus for that ball game as well.
And these guys are at positions of major need. I mean, you talk edge rusher, you talk linebacker, you talk defensive line. These are positions of need. Do you feel Colorado recruiting waking up right now like I do?
Well, I think that as they continue to play well, they're 4-1 right
Mhm.
now. You beat a ranked Kansas State team at night at your place in front of that crowd. Look, you get to 5-1, and all of a sudden you can start thinking about, hey, maybe we make a run at this college football playoff. And they've been thinking that the whole time at Colorado. Deion Sanders and his staff talked about that in the preseason. But then you start looking at the Cincinnati game where you're expecting Julian Lewis to be on campus, 5-star quarterback. Carday Smith, you're expecting him for the second time this fall, USC commit on 300 offensive tackle that Colorado has some momentum with. You're getting some of your commits back like Alex Graham, Chauncey Gooden. So,
and Alex Graham's been looking around. So that's important to get him back on campus at this time.
No question. So look, I mean, right now, Christian Hudson, Nathaniel Wusu Boateng, London Merritt, those are the key targets for Colorado this weekend. I think as they get more wins, they'll start casting a bigger net on the high school ranks, looking for guys that are immediate impact body types and players. That's the Colorado. If they're recruiting you out of high school, they're expecting you to play right away.
Yeah.
It's not you're going to sit for 2 years and be developed and then get on the field your junior year. They're expecting instant. So they're looking for those traits. So if you're a developmental guy, they're not even recruiting you.
Right.
But if you're, except for Cormani McLean, he was a developmental guy, but he was a 5-star. He weighed 160 pounds though. So that's the one developmental guy that they took that wasn't ready to play really as a true freshman. A lot of these other guys are physically ready to go, and they get them in there, and we see a lot of them making plays for them through the first 5 games of the season.
Absolutely. All right, let's bring in Hayes Fawcett. Hayes, I want to talk to you a little bit about Colorado recruiting and, what I said, and Steve, I don't know if Steve went along with me or not, but I said I felt like Colorado recruiting was waking up a little bit. We saw some recent decommitments and Colorado hop on some fresh names in the back on the market, I should say, not the portal, back on the market. But what's kind of the tone you're hearing from recruits, or what do you think of Colorado recruiting as it heads into these crucial months?
Well, Josh and Steve, I mean, you look at the past 2 years, Colorado always seems to really turn it up late in the cycle. And we're seeing, more of the same of that this time of the year as well. You had former Indiana commit Byron Baldwin recently decommit. Colorado's trending well there. Just like y'all mentioned, there's a lot of new names visiting Colorado. So stuff like that's definitely, important to monitor as we get closer to signing day.
Yeah, and like Steve said, some of these new offers, when sometimes you look at new offers that go out in the season, you're like, oh, that team's too late. But because of what you said, Steve, I think late offers don't really matter at Colorado because, like you said, if Coach Prime's offering you, it's because he wants you to come in and play right away. Normally, a late offer at the high school level might mean like, hey, we've been watching you. We like you. We're going to, a late offer based on how you've been playing. But it's kind of different with Coach Brown.
Well, in addition to Deion Sanders just being such an electric, charismatic personality that when you get in front of him, he just blows you away. The NFL resumes of that coaching staff, what they've done as players, what they've done as assistant coaches at various NFL franchises, it immediately gives them credibility when they're talking to recruits. And it's like, hey, you want to get prepared to play at the highest level better than anybody. That's kind of Colorado's pitch, Deion Sanders and company's pitch to recruits. And it resonates with a lot of them. And again, obviously the portal is their foundation and where they put a lot of time and emphasis. But when they go the high school route, the guys they offer, they bat pretty high when they get a guy to campus, when they get a young man to campus. Now they throw out some wide cast net offers too, like everybody. But when they get a young man to campus, they got a pretty high hit rate. Byron Baldwin, like Hayes mentioned, he's a guy that I have RPM to Colorado right now. And there's some other schools trying to come in late, but I think that Colorado is in a good spot for Byron Baldwin right now. Hayes, let's go back to Travis Hunter's recruitment, man.
Where do we even begin, man?
Well, obviously, I remember doing the early signing period show and not even asking about Jackson State in the morning, just asking around schools in the SEC if they thought Travis Hunter would potentially flip to them. And they were all like, no. So I was asking the wrong people, and then getting an alert like 30 minutes before or 40, I don't know, maybe it was an hour before that saying I even kind of like Jackson, and he might be ending up at Jackson State. When did you how was it from your perspective? Were you talking to Travis that day? What's your memory of Travis Hunter's recruitment and flip to Jackson State?
So obviously, I'm pretty sure he committed to Florida State extremely early in the cycle.
Dream school.
And I remember like all throughout, the months leading up to signing day, everyone was asking him, Travis Hunter, what's your commitment status? Are you still, locked in with Florida State, et cetera, et cetera. I remember him being live on Instagram, continually saying that. Everybody would clip it, post it, things like that. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Steve. I didn't really hear about it until like an hour before he did his little live ceremony thing where he threw the hat and then, put on the Jackson State hat. But that was really the story of that signing day where he, flipped from Florida State to Jackson State. I mean, here we are today still talking about it.
It was a pretty amazing time. I was covering Florida State.
Most memorable moment.
When Travis Hunter flipped. And we were doing a live stream because we thought, hey, we're just going to do a quick live stream. Florida State, they shouldn't have any big surprises on signing day, so we'll just go live. Well, we're on the live stream, and I get a text. It was a text saying Travis Hunter's going to Jackson State, and it came from inside the Moore Center at Florida State. It came from somebody on staff there, and it was about an hour before. And right now, if you go on Twitter and you go to GIFs and you type in Josh Newberg, there's a GIF of me sipping out of a coffee mug. I screenshot the text that said Travis Hunter's going to Jackson State, and I sent it to my coworkers, Chris Nee and Brendan Sinone. And as they're reading it, that's me like sipping the mug, waiting for their reaction. And so I was on live stream when it all went down, when I found out that Travis Hunter was flipping. And, I think what caught everybody off guard, and Steve, is if you go back to 2021, most people thought he was going to flip to Georgia. Like Jackson State really wasn't on the radar in terms of like teams that insiders were checking for.
No, I mean, that was one of the schools I checked with in the morning. So it was like, is Travis Hunter on Flip Watch? Well, they don't feel good about it in Athens. So I don't think he is on Flip Watch. And then again, like Florida State reaching out, people at Florida State reaching out, asking me, because
Florida State got completely blindsided.
No, I think they knew that something wasn't right, though.
They knew something was afoot.
Yes.
But they had no idea.
They didn't know what they knew, but they knew that something wasn't right. Like, and so then you start to piece it together, and then you know
But
there was look, that's right.
is-
So yeah, a coach in the SEC texted me and said that Travis Hunter was going to Jackson State. And so obviously there's the Peach State is heavily recruited.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So these college coaches have so many relationships with these high school coaches in these buildings in the state of Georgia. So it was just the right one to just say, hey, Travis Hunter's going to Jackson State. And so you're just, yeah, man, it was awesome. It's the most memorable moment for me in the close to 20 years of recruiting. And then he's the best player in college football. I
He
think
could
we
have
saw
gone anywhere, and this proved it. Like Travis Hunter didn't need a program.
well,
All the programs need Travis Hunter.
look, he could, yeah, absolutely. I think we saw him walk into the tunnel. Is that right, Trey? Does he leave the field? That's just disappointing because if he's not on the field, if they can beat Kansas State with Travis Hunter, without him, that's a hell of an effort. But just the amount of attention he commands on offense, and then you're always aware of him on defense and how many snaps he plays and the motor he has, and then just what a good teammate he is and how competitive he is and how he's wired right. You know, he's a fantastic player that's going to be a top 3 draft pick, and he should win the Heisman Trophy because what he's doing is completely unheard of. We've seen some two-way players, but not to the magnitude. I mean, he's playing two ways, like he's still playing in the Peach State. He's
Pop
the
Warner football.
He is the best two-way player to come out of Georgia since Champ Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Champ Bailey, for some of you, Hayes, do you know Champ Bailey?
Yes, sir, I do.
My man.
Really smart.
I was gonna say,
But how many of your friends, do you think a lot of your friends know Champ Bailey?
The ones that know ball would know for sure.
Okay. Even ones that know ball might not. I mean, Champ Bailey is, he was a fantastic high school player, great college player, and obviously a hell of a pro. But Travis Hunter's doing things bigger and better than him in high school and now college. And That's a hell of a bar to eclipse.
All right, Colorado fans, you got to be feeling good about what you've been hearing on the recruiting trail. We've been talking a lot. Steve's been talking a lot of Colorado, new names on the recruiting board. So talk to us, comment section below. How are you guys feeling about recruiting as these months tick away? We get into October, November, and December. Let us know, comment section below. All right, let's head down to Baton Rouge as the Tigers and Rebels are wrapping this game up right now. We got 23-16, Steve. So we're going to probably be talking in this segment as this game comes to a close. But there was some big news in the Bayou, and we don't even need to wait till this game ends to talk about their latest commitment. Safety Jacob Bradford was in the Bayou this weekend. He was formerly committed to Houston, decommitted prior to the weekend, I believe. So not technically a flip, but a flip nonetheless. So Jacob Bradford is now an LSU Tiger. Steve, what are the implications of Bradford committing?
Well, he's a versatile defensive back that has really strong movement skills. I mean, he is a change of direction guy that plays very physical. His younger brother, Blaine Bradford's our number 1 ranked safety in the country. But Jacob doesn't get enough credit for how athletic he is and the things he can do in the secondary, the type of guys he can cover and things of that nature. So this is a really nice pickup for LSU to keep another prize target in state. Coming out of his official visit last weekend, LSU hosted visitors, a lot of the Louisiana kids, for an official visit last weekend over their bye week. Jacob was uncommitted. They bring him back this week.
Yeah, they had 10 official visitors. He was the only uncommitted on campus.
And he committed. Hayes, you broke the news. What did Jacob tell you about why he chose the Tigers?
Yeah, Steve, this one's been in the works for a long time. Obviously, you have a kid from Baton Rouge Catholic High. You know, the in-state Tigers are going to keep, a stronghold on him. Like you said, Steve, his younger brother, you actually placed an RPM for the Tigers earlier today. Blaine is the number 10 overall recruit in the On 300 rankings for the 2026 class and the number 1 safety. So that's another one to monitor when it comes to the Bradfords and the LSU Tigers.
All right, Steve, let's talk about a couple other flip targets on campus. Anquan Fegans, who's committed to Auburn. He's been looking around. He was at Georgia last weekend. Now he's at LSU, committed to Auburn. He committed to Auburn right here on the On3 Recruits channel. And also, this was a surprise reported on Friday. 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, who's committed to Alabama, was also at the game. Now they're playing Ole Miss. He's from the state of Mississippi. But what do you make of Caleb Cunningham being on campus here?
Well, again, he's keeping a lot of schools warm right now. Alabama still obviously the program to beat. That's where he's committed, but you follow Chad Simmons reporting on this and mine. This one's going to go all the way to December. We're going to be talking about Caleb Cunningham. He's going to be one of the hottest names around the early signing period because Ole Miss is going to be right there. They haven't even thrown all their haymakers yet. He has not taken his official visit to Ole Miss yet. I would expect Ole Miss has got a couple big home games at the end of the year. I think Oklahoma and Georgia are big home games for Ole Miss at the end of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's at both of those ball games, an official visit for one of those ball games. Look, Alabama, great relationship there. Coach Jamarcus Shepard, the Tide, the track record of offense and receiver development under the coaches in that room. He was blown away by his visit to Alabama in June. He committed, but now other schools are trying to catch up. You got Auburn trying to catch up. You got LSU trying to catch up. And then you got Ole Miss. I still view Ole Miss as the biggest challenger. But anytime Auburn or LSU are alive, they got the ability to make a major move with somebody, and LSU's got him on campus right now. The Tigers, it's 4th and 5, 32 seconds, 23-16. Nussmeier under center from their 24-yard line. Let's see what happens here, Josh, because this could change our conversation a little
now,
bit.
Ole
here.
Miss, I kind of feel like Lane Kiffin has a strategy here because you said it on Caleb Cunningham, and I kind of feel like Ole Miss touchdown. How about that? Nussmeier does it. Wow.
Charles Power text during the game earlier said that Nussmeier is going to have the most high-level NFL throws on his college game tape.
That was an NFL throw right there. That was a dart
right there. So we're 23-22 with 27 seconds.
Another overtime night game in the SEC. We're knocking on the door of another overtime game here. This would be a phenomenal game to be at if you're a recruit. It's got to be. I mean, it's got to be. This is one of the Death Valley LSU Ole Miss matchup is quintessential SEC night football. Got to love it. Let's talk a little bit about Jacob Bradford's brother. You hit on it, Blaine Bradford. He's the number one safety in America for the 2026 class. Do you like where LSU sits? Are you close to dropping an RPM for Blaine Bradford?
I did earlier today.
I didn't even know that.
How for
we're
Blaine
in
Bradford.
recruit reaction. You gotta lead with that, Steve. That's big news.
Yeah, Blaine Bradford. I like where LSU stands. Look, there's programs like Notre Dame that have his eye and schools of that nature, but I just think proximity to family, super close-knit family, getting a chance to continue playing ball with his brother, playing in atmospheres like this in Death Valley. 23-23. If LSU wins this ball game, everything that they still set out for before the season's in front of them, a potential SEC championship, the college football playoff, everything's still on the table for the Tigers if they can win this ball game tonight. Even if they don't win this ball game tonight, it's actually still on the table for them. But
what do we think of Jakeem Stewart?
Well, look, they're obviously one of the front runners. He's going to come back for their game against Alabama. He's having a terrific experience right now at Oregon, watching the Ducks beat another one of his top schools, Ohio State. USC rounds out that top four. Look, there's a lot of people in that state that think Jakeem Stewart's ultimately going to end up at LSU because of his relationship with Frank Wilson. And look, LSU's going to do everything they can to keep this young man in state. But that is a true blue chip recruiting battle. They got some major competition out there, and it's going to be a war for him. But LSU, they got the number 3 class in the country right now, and they're trying to swing a heavy spatula on guys like Anquan Fegans and Caleb Cunningham, who are on campus this weekend. And there's the class right there. Bryce Underwood, hands down, the number 1 recruit in the country this cycle. DJ Pickett, our number 1 ranked cornerback at On 3. He's number 2 per the On 3 RPM. Harlan Berry is one of the electric backs that they have committed right now. And so, look, they're going to have to battle Notre Dame to keep Derek Meadows. They got people trying to come into there.
And DJ Pickett's not going to be easy to hold on to either.
Right. But that's big boy recruiting. LSU's playing big boy football tonight here, though. Ole Miss trying to get in the field goal range here at the end of this ball game here. All
right. Well, LSU fans, I doubt you're tuned in right now, but this is going to be a great video to watch once this game's over as we head into overtime. But LSU fans, talk to us. How you feeling about recruiting? How you feeling about the rest of the season? Like Steve said, the whole season's right there in front of you, win or lose. So how we feeling? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, where are we going next? We're going to the West Coast. We're going to talk USC recruiting. The Trojans, they drop one at home to Penn State, 33-30. I watched a lot of the first half of this one, and I thought, wow, USC's defense really came to play. Not so much in the second half. They lose this one. Some really big names on campus, including prized quarterback commitment. Julian Lewis, the 5-star quarterback, number 5 ranked quarterback in America, goes along with a couple other flip targets. You got Benny Patterson. He's a defensive lineman committed to Cincinnati that USC's been trying to get out on campus for a couple weeks now. You got safety Stephen Miller committed to Mississippi State. And then you got defensive lineman Joseph Mbachu, who seems like he is just trying to find any team besides the one he's committed to attend. He's been taking visits everywhere but Florida for the entire season. And then you got some really, really talented 2026 prospects led by quarterback Ryder Lyons, interior offensive lineman Samuel Utu, and On 3's number 1 linebacker in the 2026 class, Tyler Atkinson. So, Steve, is USC okay? I mean, they dropped another game here. A lot of top recruits at home. What do you make of this?
Well, all their games have been fun, exciting ball games. The 3 losses have been tough. They've been right there in all of those games. The win over LSU, super exciting to start the season. Beating Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, also exciting. Look, I have a new On 3 RPM in favor of USC right now. Stephen Miller, safety, committed to Mississippi State. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in USC's class by the end of the night. I like where the Trojans stand there. Sending some other text messages on USC, but 4-star wide receiver commit Corey Sims was back, had a fantastic visit.
Now, there's rumors he was going to visit Nebraska last weekend, but that didn't happen.
It did not happen.
Okay, so this was good to see him back on campus.
He's locked in. Look, I think if you're watching USC this year, you are seeing, though their record is not what they want it to be, I think you can see that this program is moving in the right direction and that college football is just hard. Now, they got to maintain this level of play and find a way to win some of these ball games in the second half of the season. Well, there's a lot more big games out there for USC, a lot more opportunity. And I'm just excited I just like watching them fly around and play with the physicality that they're playing with on defense and still making things happen on offense. And this isn't your traditional Lincoln Riley offense. He doesn't have his first round draft pick Heisman Trophy winner under center right now at quarterback. I think that receiver room, he's still recruiting, building it up to get it to the full electricity that we were used to seeing at Oklahoma. That offensive line, they got some really nice young talent on the offensive line. So USC's a team that we could be looking at next year, and they could be 6-0 at this point.
Yeah.
Next year, I think they got a great defensive coaching staff in place. They're recruiting at a high level. They're pushing for a top 10 class. They're at number 11 nationally right now. They're in great spot for guys like Ryder Lyons and Samuelo Utu in the 2026 class. They're already in the top 10 right now, early in 2026. So they've lost some gut wrenchers. Some tough at Michigan, the one today. I mean,
the one today hurts. They played really well. I thought they had a chance to run away with this one in the first half, but the defense didn't really hold up. They didn't score as many points in the second half. What do you think Julian Lewis, what's his perspective on this? Because oftentimes fans and recruits don't see the same thing on the field.
Right. I mean, I think Julian has to look at a situation and say, hey, I have an opportunity to come into USC and compete right away. I mean, we've seen Lincoln Riley play a true freshman quarterback over Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler's in the NFL. I mean, he's not a terrible player.
Right.
So
he's not afraid to play the guy that he thinks can play.
Exactly right. And so if you're Julian Lewis, you look at Lincoln Riley and you say, look, this guy's going to I'm going to get a fair shot to play if I stick with USC. And then within that, outside of this year, his starting quarterback is the first pick in the draft and the Heisman Trophy winner at some point in his career. And then he can look around and see there's some really good defensive players recruited. And that was one thing that his dad always emphasized to me early in the process. How's USC going to recruit on defense? Are they going to have the horses to play championship level football on that side of the ball? And I think you're like, well, they hired Deontay Lynn. They hired Doug Belk. They hired Coach Entz. They hired Coach Henney. So that defensive coaching staff really came together. And they're recruiting. Look, they got a chance to finish with a top 10 class. And this is a class that had some major losses along the way too, but they're in these recruiting battles. They're going toe to toe with everybody. I think that there's a lot of investment in USC football as they get all their infrastructure in order. But that doesn't mean Julian Lewis is still going to sign with USC. I mean, look, like I just gave you all the reasons why he would.
Yeah.
But look, expecting them to be at Indiana next weekend.
And there's playing time at those schools to be.
Indiana might actually be the toughest place for him to play.
To get on early. I mean, Colorado, we know Shador leaves and that thing's wide open.
Indiana took two good quarterbacks last year. They got some older guys in the room, but certainly, look, his relationship with Tino Sinceri is second to none. And then Colorado in 2 weeks for the Cincinnati game. So we'll see, how things get left with his visit to USC this weekend. It was his second home game. And I know he loves getting around Lincoln Riley. He's called him the best coach in college football because he's the head coach, he's the OC, and the quarterback's coach. And so those are things that resonated with him, but there's reasons why he likes those other schools. And there's a lot of boxes to check in the Julian Lewis recruitment. So we'll see how the chips fall as he continues through his process. But I will say this, USC, they didn't sign a quarterback last cycle. So if at any point they feel like there's a chance they don't sign Julian Lewis, they're going to go hard on somebody. And it's not going to take Lincoln Riley very long to probably flip somebody.
Yeah, we've talked about Houston and Longstreet. Well, we won't go too deep into those names until we have to. But they'll have some options. Lincoln Riley's not going to leave USC empty-handed at the quarterback position 2 years in a row. All right, USC fans, how we feeling? Recruiting's still there. I know today was a tough loss, 33-30 to Penn State. It's a tough loss, but talk to us, comment section below. How are you feeling about recruiting? How are you feeling about the flip targets on campus this weekend? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's head down to the South where we're going to wrap up the show talking a little Georgia Bulldogs recruiting. 41-31, Georgia wins over Mississippi State today. Wasn't expected to be a big visit weekend, but boy, there were some late additions to this list that made it elite, right? We got defensive lineman Elijah Griffin. We knew he was coming in. Cornerback Dijon Lee from committed Alabama, 5-star. We knew he was coming in. But then you get Zayden Walker on campus, a linebacker that picked Arkansas over Georgia and Florida State in a shocker. Got Anthony Rogers on campus. He's committed to Alabama. And then, of course, you get Anthony Crua, who's a linebacker prospect from UNC that's been on campus a couple times recently here in Athens, and I think something's cooking.
Well, Elijah Griffin's going to end up at Georgia, in my opinion. Had the on-3 RPM on the Bulldogs since April, since coming over to on-3. I think that they're by far the team to beat. Him coming to take his official visit, his birthday weekend,
right
this weekend. I think that they continue to set the tone with the way they play defense, his relationship with Trey Scott, the players on the team, what Georgia is able to do for their players. I think that it's ultimately we're in the countdown for when Elijah Griffin's in the class.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's bring in Hayes Fawcett. Hayes might be currently working on the Elijah. It's his birthday. We know recruits love dates of significance. Not only is it his birthday this weekend, but he's taking an official visit. How long have you been working on this graphic, Hayes?
I plead the fifth.
Yeah.
Look, Miami's trying hard to get Elijah Griffin to campus here still. They're undefeated. We'll see if he takes a visit to Miami, but I think that Georgia is the team to beat for Elijah Griffin. And then you look at Dijon Lee. Who else?
Yeah, what do you make of Dijon Lee being?
Well,
is that just a visit that he said he wanted to take, or is there something brewing?
Well, he's taken. Look, Oregon's trying to make a late run at him.
Yeah.
He's having a fantastic senior season for Mission Viejo. Georgia, in my opinion, was the runner-up the first time he went through his process. So we'll see that him getting back to campus. This was a needle-moving visit. Obviously, Kirby Smart, his track record as a defensive backs coach, in addition to what he's done at Georgia, has always been advantageous. Coach Dante Williams and that West Coast connections, knowing Dijon for a long time. Anthony Crua is an interesting name there because it's his second home game. It's coming down to North Carolina or Georgia. North Carolina, they're playing hard, but they lost again today. Georgia, he's been there 2 straight weeks. Linebacker is one of their big positions of need at the end of the show or at the end of the cycle. And I really think that I would be surprised if we don't see Anthony Crua in Georgia's class. I think that would come down to, did they flip Tavian Wallace, who was there today?
Tavian Wallace. I said Zayden Walker. Zayden Walker is the 5-star. He's committed to Georgia. Tavian Wallace is committed to Arkansas. I'm sorry. I made a mistake earlier in the show. So
and Tavian was at Arkansas 2 weeks ago for the Razorbacks' victory over Tennessee. And you see him posting pictures with his future quarterback teammate and stuff. And Coach Woodson and his relationship is second to none. So it's not
when we talk about surprise commitments during the summer. I mean, I know we talk a lot about CJ Wiley and that commitment to Florida State over LSU and Georgia, but Tavian Wallace committing to Arkansas over Georgia and FSU, who Georgia and FSU we kind of thought they were going back and forth for Tavian Wallace. And now he shows back up in Athens. I mean,
well, he visited Florida State and Georgia a lot more, and probably that's geographically related. But Hayes, I'd love to ask you on Tavian Wallace, just your thoughts on, when did you see him going to Arkansas? How did that play out for you behind the scenes? Our guy, Philip Dukes, here at the 5-Star Flex, he had a nice interview with Tavian Wallace before he popped for Arkansas publicly. How did he spell that out for you behind the scenes?
I just remember him calling me on the phone like 3 or 4 days before he announced. And I remember whenever he told me, he was like, this is going to shock a lot of people, because I think the industry consensus was that, he was probably going to go to Florida State. And he knew that, obviously. And then he, committed to Arkansas. And that was definitely one of the big surprises of the summer, I would say.
But when he called you, that was the first you had heard of Arkansas?
Yeah. He never said anything about any other school. It was just Arkansas the whole time. So
no, he had talked to you about Arkansas the whole time, or just in that last 3 days?
Oh, yeah, no, just in the days leading up to his commitments, it was always Arkansas. Like we said with Pickett, and there's countless of other examples of guys. During the week they're going to commit at one point they say one school and then they switch it to another one. With Wallace, it was Arkansas the whole time.
Yeah, I don't think people, even the diehard readers that read us all the time, realize how much things change even over the final like 72 hours sometimes, because these young men are making these difficult decisions and they're trying, and you got Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and guys like that making their final pitches. They didn't get these jobs by accident.
No.
Brian Kelly,
And they've been through a lot of these battles before. They know what to say.
Exactly right. And so these things are fluid and things change at the buzzer too, with maybe some of the things that you're able to promise a young man as well.
Yeah.
From an infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Now, Georgia's going to head to Texas next week, but hey, we got Anthony Crua showing back on campus. Is he on flip watch, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's still taking his time, but again, he got a lot of love for North Carolina. Everyone loves Coach Mac Brown. He is the best. I mean, like, he's fantastic. He's first class, treats everybody the way you want to be treated. So they got a lot of people in that class that are rooting for them to get it on track and play better. And that community does a great job supporting their student athletes as well. And that's why we see North Carolina do such a great job recruiting the state year in and year out. But 2 visits for him to the state of Georgia, or to the Georgia games, in-state kid,
back-to-back weekends
that Glenn Schumann and company are turning it up for. I like the way it's starting to trend for Georgia.
All right, Georgia fans, tap in, talk to us. How we feeling after a win over Mississippi State? Some big-time recruits on campus. Talk to us, comment section below. All right, let's go to the Longhorn State. We got one more team to talk about. We're talking Texas recruiting, and Texas today, they whooped up on Oklahoma, 34-3. Longhorns dominate the Sooners. Georgia on deck. Next week, the visit list is going to be loaded. 5-star Michael Terry, 5-star Justice Terry, Javian Hilson going to be on campus, potentially Kevin Wynn. I want to know how you feel Texas can finish, because right now the Longhorns have to be one of the hottest teams on the trail, just seeing how they're playing. This roster we knew was elite, but when you watch a rivalry game like this and you see Oklahoma, who also entered the SEC, not even really able to compete with Texas right now. And it's top to bottom, right? Like, Texas's roster is just absolutely loaded, and there's more on the board. So let's talk a little Texas recruiting. I know they didn't have a home game today, Steve, but what do you think this win over Oklahoma did for them?
Well, look, Georgia's my favorite to finish with On3's #1 ranked recruiting class, but Texas is still mathematically alive to finish #1 when you look at some of the names that are still out there for them. 5-star athlete Michael Terry is going to be back for the Georgia game next week. I think that they're the runaway leader for him. I have an On3 RPM in favor of Texas right now for edge rusher Javian Hilson from Cocoa, Florida. You see some of the Justice Terry, he's going to take an official visit there next weekend, which tells me that they're not afraid to swing at anybody, right? Like, I think Georgia is the heavy favorite for Justice Terry, but Texas going to get them on campus, and we'll see what happens. They're still pushing for guys like Kevin Wynn, and then those in-state elites, the Michael Fasusis, the Riley Pettijohns.
That's where it gets interesting. That's where you wonder, and not to say that we're going to pencil any of these guys into the class. Right. But you get one of those flips to go along with, I know we didn't talk about it, but they flipped Florida State wide receiver Dalen McCutcheon on Friday.
Speaking of that, Hayes had that news. Hayes, you broke the story on Dalen McCutcheon flipping to Texas. I had a chance to talk to him afterwards as well, but just what did he tell you about his commitment to Texas and just your impressions on this class?
Yeah, so with Dalen, he told me the wide receiver coach for Texas continued to recruit him extremely hard throughout his whole process, even though, he was committed to Florida State. He also said that, staying home was big for him as well. And like you touched on earlier, Texas is, I'm not going to say like bombarding, but they're going in that Florida State class and, trying to get guys from that class. Javian Hilson recently decommitted from Florida State. Texas is one to watch there. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to ask you about Riley Pettijohn. So when Riley Pettijohn committed to Ohio State, it sounded like it was over between him and Texas. Has anything happened between the Pettijohns and Texas? Is there any communication?
Well, I knew that. I mean, Texas, that's one where they were not ever going to go away. Riley Pettijohn's a great kid, football family, special athlete at the linebacker position. Texas and Texas A&M are both trying to stay alive for Riley Pettijohn, and even USC is too.
Yeah.
But Texas racking up big win after big win, beat Michigan on the road, smashing Oklahoma. Now you got Georgia coming into town. We'll see what these kind of wins can do with some of these super tight 5-star potential flip type recruitments at the end.
Yeah. And same with, Michael Fasusi a year ago at this time, I think all signs pointed to Texas. He was a regular visitor in Austin. He was the number 1 offensive tackle in the state of Texas. He ends up committing to Oklahoma. LSU just won. Okay, hold on. He ends up committing to Oklahoma. Michael Fasusi, is he one that you think is flippable? Is he flippable?
I'm not sure yet, but look, we've covered recruiting for a long time, so nothing surprises me anymore. I haven't heard any Michael Fasusi buzz behind the scene. I just know Texas was a finalist, and
he was on campus as a junior. He was there almost every week.
Their season's going one way right now.
Yeah.
And so, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Next weekend, is this just the tip of the iceberg on what you expect in Austin for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see all the state's top 2026s and 2027s. You'll see a lot of people from Louisiana and stuff. Louisiana's become an important state for Texas.
I want to see if DeCorian Moore shows up. I know it's been very quiet. He's all locked into Oregon, but sometimes all it takes is a visit to a game like this to kind of re-spark that flame that, has been really extinguished since he committed on July 4th.
No question.
Or whatever date.
Texas's receiver class came together without DeCorian Moore this cycle.
How about that?
Yep. So
how about that? Yeah. All right, Texas fans, you got to be feeling good heading into this Georgia matchup next week. And that's going to be our recruit reaction. We are going to be right here at this desk for Texas, Georgia next week. So Texas fans, tap in, talk to us. Give us your early score predictions. Comment section below. All right. That is it for recruit reaction on another late Saturday night. Thank you for all you recruiting sickos for sticking around with me and Steve and Hayes Fawcett. We had a great time. If you're still hanging out, make sure you smash that subscribe button because we do this every Saturday night, talking instant recruit reaction. See you next week.